camera, please subscribe my channel. Hello guys, let's start with the Rammtiger. In 2021, das Werk released a very interesting model on the market. Model was called Rammtiger, so it was actually a Porsche Tiger with amazing looking superstructure. Let's think about it. Another false invention? Nothing like that. There are sources that say that actually 3 chassis were used to make those vehicles. Also, sketches and photos of the wooden model in 1/15 scale have survived to this day. You can find them on the internet. A few words about the construction of this unique vehicle. The superstructure is practically one large plastic element. Apart from the movable doors at the back, there are no details. I decided to make a ladder made from copper wire. I covered the entire hull with ammo putty to reproduce the structure of rolled steel. Weld marks are, of course, made with green stuff. I used the leftover green stuff to make a cloth on the front of the armor. Okay, let's rock with the paint job. For start, XF1 from Tamiya, black matte paint. And I've been mentioning for several years on my Facebook profile, in my videos, on my photos, the basis of great painting is the darkest possible base paint. For me it has always been matte black. I received criticism for the way I paint because, truth to be told, our environment is not only full of great models, but also many advertises. We must always be ready for a criticism because someone doesn't like something. This has happened to me all my life, and this strengthened me to continue modeling according to my own rules. The Das Werk kit allows us to make a movable suspension and tracks, which makes it easier to place in the diverse terrain. If we have the concept of making a base before building chassis. I didn't have any idea before, so I made it just straight and flat to put it on the flat base, so well, we can handle with that later. Our hull is nearly black, so we can prepare the next step. We need to take XF55 Tamiya deck tan and make some shadows on the surface of that great big plastic part. I love this moment when model becomes darker before my eyes. It's a kind of magic. Well, sorry. It's a kind of magic because at this point I can already see next steps of painting. I know what I expect. Vision in my head, but how to transfer it to the real life? Well, it's not so easy, but I will try. It is worth remembering that shading is not precise work. It is better to let yourself be carried away by airbrush. Let's face it, it's a kind of art, right? So let the art talk through us. And please remember, at this point you don't need to dilute Tamiya paints. Okay, so we need to paint also the chassis with the black matte paint, XF1 from Tamiya, acrylic. So we need to repeat all the stuff, so it takes a little bit time to make it black again. And then we can start with panzer gray, a new way maybe of panzer gray. Now you can think, what I can show new with the panzer gray shade. It is very easy, simple to paint, but remember, it cannot be dark. I use most of the time, the bluish shadow to make more brighter color, to create more effects, visual effects on the model kit. Okay, so we have the primed with the black paint chassis, the main vehicle, the Tiger, Porsche, wherever. and we need to make some bright shadows with the Decton, or we can use buff XF57 or even XF2 flat white, wherever we want, and we cannot make some mistake, but I will tell you about it a little bit later. Well, we can start in two ways. We can use German Grey Tamiya Acrylics XF63, or we can risk a lot, maybe not a lot, but risk a little bit, and use Field Blue XF50 as our base German Grey paint. Why I want to use blue shade to make something gray? Well, remember that we made model in scale, so we need to make it more brighter, because normal standard panzer gray was nearly black paint. It was super dark, and in scale modeling we need to make update for the scale of the model. So when we're making something smaller than original vehicle, we need to make it more brighter. It's very simple, right? And we need to do it. We need to do it now. And so I reached the error mentioned before. I forgot to dilute paint Panzer Gray. That's why I would like to remind you that this phase, I mean painting actual color, always involves dilution, because entire pre-shading effect disappears under paint layer. This is same advice for me in the future, mainly for me. But there is no point in making a Greek tragedy. Everything can be saved in next stage of adding gray shades. The shape of this hull, even though it looks as if it was defective, is a very good base for all kind of shading. However, after superstructure is put on, it will be practically invisible, but satisfaction of well done job will stay with me forever. Another very important phase of this project, XF50, Field Blue, diluted with X28 thinner. 4 droplets of thinner would be good. Also, you can replace XF50 with a lighter tone. Good idea would be use of XF18. Now, time for big question. Why is this stage so important? Generally, each stage is important for everything to look as it should, right? But I noticed that color I use in the middle, I mean layer after base color but before final lightning, is color that determines what the model will ultimately look like. If I use a grayish shade, model could be very dark after oils and filters, of course. And if I used too light tone, model could still be saved on the weathering stage. I often paint intuitively, waiting to see what will happen after weathering. I'm trying to control it, but sometimes spontaneity is the key to a unique model. This is what whole looks like after 2 colors. While recording I noticed that I had run out of third color, XF19 Sky Gray, so I decided to brighten XF50 with XF2 Matte White, about 60% Field Blue to 40% white. As you can see, I apply the paint chaotically. Thanks to this, after weathering process, model will not be flat. Individual surfaces will gain depth, and it's worth ignoring edges and welts. It's better to leave those areas darker. But that's not the end of fun. I noticed that model is still very dark. I was in a good enough mood to brighten it up as much as possible, so I added another 2 extra tones, mixing previously mentioned Field Blue and white paints, this time in proportion of 40% to 60, and finally 25% to 75. It's worth being careful with this last step. I painted only smallest details and delicately marked surfaces. Now it looks much better. Oof, now I can think about superstructure. I was considering two options, red primer or rusty traces of storage of rolled steel. Continuing my adventures with the red primer, I will stuck to this idea again. To create very nice red primer base for that kind of vehicle, I will start with green. Yes, basically it's even thick green from Vallejo game color palette, number 72.029. And I use it for lower parts of all panels because it is nice when I put the red primer, it will be transition between red and green, like old red paint and fresh red paint. You will see. Okay, let's imagine that situation. Painted with red primer, plates of steel were placed on grass, and after a few days, green from the ground begins to settle on the lower parts of plates. This is the effect I wanted to achieve. Green shadows applied, so it's time for some real fun. Red primer. I started always with Tamiya XF7 flat red, diluted with X28 acrylic thinner, about 20% of thinner for 1 cup of paint in airbrush. You'll have to forgive me, but I set the lights too strong directly on the model, so red color in the video will be very offensive to eyes. Sorry about that. I tried to save everything with settings in video editing software, but result is not thrilling. Unfortunately, when painting one model, I cannot make a double. I will try to explain whole effect as best I can. Key to amazing color transitions in this case is water. I will add that I am not a chemist, I base on my observations. I do not know what is happening inside my airbrush, but mix looks like this, in order. Tamiya acrylic paint, thinner, Vallejo game color, water, finally Tamiya white paint. I will provide proportions later in this material. As you can see, first shadows are visible, and this is only first layer of color. It will be a tasty piece of model. If everything is fine after first step, you really can't mess it up. It can only get better. Another milestone ahead of me, and here's another unique thing, shadow enhancement. I used XF9 Hull Red paint for this. That is a name in the Tamiya color palette that corresponds to what I'm doing. As you can see, there is a huge difference. Tamiya Hull Red is simply a very dark brown. Of course, I only apply this color to plate joints and welds. By strengthening the shadows on the model in this way, we will achieve amazing effects in the weathering process. Remember, it doesn't have to be precise edge painting. Next step will smooth out transitions. Now it's time for specific shading, or rather brightening. Basic color will be mixture of 75% flat red paint, 10% of yellow paint. I used Vallejo game color 72007 gold yellow, 5% of water and 5% of flat white. In addition, 5% of Tamiya acrylic thinner. That's my secret mixture, but please do not tell anyone. Now all we need is some careless linear painting, lightening my secret mixture by adding 1 or 2 more drops of white paint, and we got a really nice effect. A little free advice. It's worth painting upper layers of elements, plates of our superstructure, just a little reminder about color modulation. This will make stains and other effects more visible later. If you feel that there are not enough colors, you can always change proportions. For example, with dominant role of yellow paint. The shadows will become more orange, giving a more rusty look when filters are added. Superstructure is ready for further work. In the next episode, weathering, mud, dust, chipping, stains, and many other techniques that each of us loves, right? So guys, thank you for watching. You can support me on my Patreon, Blitz Creations, also the same name on YouTube. I appreciate that a lot, and soon weathering of that crazy machine.